Today on Paralysis to Purpose.
I was one of the last players of my friends to get to the NFL, and I was the very first one of my friends to come out. God, why is this happening to me? Because if you don't go there, you'll never be able to help people go from where they are to where I'm calling them to be.
Yeah. Here we go. You can do anything you put your mind to. What seems impossible can be done by you. It may knock you down, but don't let it stop you. Got so much to give, a lot of life to live. You must go from paralysis to purpose.
This is Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast with David Cooks.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. I'm your host, David Cooks, and I tell you what, you're in for a great show today. I'm so excited about our guest today. He's a guy that came from a really small town in California called Vacaville. Yeah, you don't even know where that is, but I'll let him tell you. From a single-parent home, he's an only child. Went on to do some great things athletically. We're going to talk about that today. Currently, he is an author of two great books. One, Permission to Dream, and second, The Relentless Pursuit of Greatness. If you haven't read them, you got to get those books. He's a speaker extraordinaire. This guy, he's really good. He's been endorsed by some of the best people in the world, does a great job with that. He's a philanthropist. He's a thought leader in the space of transitioning in life, and we all transition. And so we're going to have a great conversation with Thomas Williams today. We're going to talk about his journey from paralysis to purpose. And one of the things you know about this podcast is that paralysis does not have to always take on a physical form. For me, it did at age 15, and you know that. And for some of our guests, it will. But paralysis can be psychological, it can be financial, it can be in relationships, it can be emotional, it can be any number of things. And so just be prepared today to really learn some things. And so, Thomas, man, thank you for being here. I am, if you can't tell, I'm juiced up, baby, ready to go.
David, what's going on? Good morning to you. Good afternoon, man. As you were talking, I'm over here kind of like, it reminded me of playing football. And it's like, all right, we got 5 minutes until kickoff. You're like, coach, but I want to go now. And so you kept giving me some juice. And so, man, I'm honored to be here. Thank you for the amazing introduction. And I love the title of your podcast because it is the transition going from one stage of life into, again, like you said, your purpose, man. So let's get into it, man, and let's feed the audience.
Hey, fantastic. Hey, well, let's just start. I know in your book, Permission to Dream, there was something that was said to your mom that was interesting to me. And she was told that your destiny, that your legacy was going to be in a gang as a leader, and that you'd be dead by 16 years old, and that she might as well give up on you now. That was one area. But then there was someone in high school that spoke into your life that helped to change your drive and give you direction. Can you talk about both of those situations? Let's start with you're nothing and you're going to be nothing. And how you digested that, how your mom digested that, and how you didn't let that become that did not become a fulfilling prophecy for you. Let's start there, and then we get to high school and get to some of your other.
Yeah, it's beautiful and great memory. And you've definitely done your research, and it's interesting. It stuck out to you. And I'm 36 years old now. And so it stuck out. It's been sticking out to me ever since the day that it happened. So it happened at 12 years old. And so let me take you back a little bit. Me, I'm biracial, mom's white, father's black. I grew up in a very small town, Vacaville, which is right between San Francisco and Sacramento. The only reason you really stop and know about Vacaville if you're going to stop at In-N-Out Burger on your way from one to the other, or if you're running out of gas and you need to pull over and fill up.
The In-N-Out Burger, that's a good reason to stop. Let me just say that.
It's a great reason. And I feel like we were one of the first locations kind of like on that Northern California passage on 80 going east and west. And so people obviously stopped. And so for me, when I grew up from the age of, I always say from like, let's call it 6 or 7 to the age of 12, I was practicing my profession, so to speak. Usually you get internships in college I had an internship and I say I'm a talker. I'm a gifted talker by trade, but purpose. I'm a speaker. Mm-hmm. And so I used to speak all the time in elementary school. I mean, so much that they would kick me out of class. And I always tell my mom, it's so funny that they kicked me out of class for speaking. Now they pay me and bring me back into class for speaking. And so I'm like, hey, some of those butt whoopings you gave me and some of those timeouts, I feel like there needs to be some type of restitution there, because I was just practicing, Mom, for my career. I got to my 10,000 hours, David, a lot earlier than most people. And so, going through third grade had a tough time, fourth grade had a tough time, just struggling. Every year at parent teacher conferences, they'd say, Thomas is great at lunch. Thomas is great at recess. He's awesome at PE. He's not so good at doing his homework, and he talks a lot in class. And so that was every year, twice a year for the parent teacher conferences. And so on this day in particular, my mom comes home in sixth grade, and she's got tears in her eyes. And I didn't know what happened. I don't know if something happened at work. I don't know if something happened on her drive home from work. And she said, do you want to know what your teacher told me today at the parent teacher conference? And I said to myself, oh man, that was today? Because usually you want to get prepared for parent teacher conferences. Like, all right, let me go outside and let me play with my friends for the last time.
Get it all in, right?
Get grounded. Let me watch as much TV as I possibly can. Let me eat the junk food. Let me do all of my yeses leading up until this day, because I know I'm gonna be grounded for about a week. And so I said, no, I don't know what the teacher told you. He said, by the time you're 16 years old, that you're going to be the leader of a gang and eventually die. And I said, wait, what? I just go to school, I have a good time. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm not a really good reader at popcorn reading. I go to the bathroom a lot during the boring subjects, but I'm just a kid trying to have fun. I'm trying to figure this out. So as you alluded to earlier, my father wasn't in my life at an earlier time, and being biracial, that you don't know where you fit in. So my mom at the time was dating Ron, who I consider my stepdad and who raised me, did a phenomenal job. Ron's white. And so I have two white parents, and everywhere I went, I had this dialogue and this narrative that was happening inside of my brain of, do I belong here? And so every room that I stepped into, I was like, do I belong? And so because I asked myself the do I belong question, I feel like I acted out to try to make myself fit in so that I did belong. I could tell you probably to the time I was like 18 years old, I was like, are they not telling me I'm adopted? And because I just went out and like, I just looked different from everybody on that side of the family. And so for me during that time and that day in particular I was like, wow, so I had 4 years to live. My sixth grade teacher told my mom that I basically have 4 years to live. And I hugged my mom, and I just remember thinking to myself that I'm gonna help you get those same tears, but it's gonna be tears of joy. Not tears of pain, not tears of hurt, but tears of joy. And so it was that situation that changed my perspective of myself, and also understanding that when I leave the house, it's not just me. You talked about I'm an only child. Now I am an only child. And I mean, I fit every description to the T. I mean, I'm engaged right now, and sometimes I'll get something to eat or something to drink for myself. And my fiance will say, well, what about me? And I'm like, oh, that's right. You're here too. So, I mean, I really do fit the mold. But that day, it really let me know that when I leave the house, I represent everybody whose last name I have. My mom and I have the same last name. And so I represent her, that what I do is going to affect how people view and treat her. And so she was crying, and it was still a little bit uneasy moving forward. It wasn't just like voila. It was, but I found purpose. I found something to aim on. I'm an extremely competitive person, but I found the opportunity to aim to something. I said, I'm going to prove her right, and I'm going to prove him wrong. Because one of the things that we don't understand fully is that there's a group of people who are in your corner, and there's a group of people who are on the opposite side of the ring in their corner. And so that's the opponent. And it could be a person, it could be a thing, it could be a stigma, you name it. And so there's somebody who wants to beat you. That's life.
Yep.
And then there's somebody who wants you to win. And my mom in that moment showed me that there's people who are rooting for you. And then so you got to prove them right. And the people who are rooting against you, those are the people who you have to prove wrong.
You found out at a very early age about purpose.
Yes.
It wasn't your life purpose at the time, but as a young child, it gave you some goals, some standards, some things to reach for. And one of the things that when I talk to people about purpose, is that your natural giftings your purpose is hidden in your natural gifts. Hidden in your natural gifts.
Yeah.
What was a problem for you as a kid
Yes.
became the platform for your purpose in life later.
Hello, somebody. Hello, somebody.
And so what a wonderful story of people who did not understand your gifting. It was out of the box. It made people uncomfortable, but it was who you were. And what you said was, I'm just a kid trying to have fun.
Yeah.
That's all I'm trying to do. I can't help but I talk all the time. That's just what I do.
That's what I do. That's what I do. And so, just exactly what you said. I love how you pulled that from everything that I said, because there's so many times where we think that because I'm not seeing the amount of success at it early on, that I'm not supposed to do this later on. And so, we can talk about the story in transition, but I think at that moment, I didn't understand, because here's the thing, we'll never be able to see the end from the beginning because we're not the creator.
That's right.
And so what we have to do is we have to kind of, like you said, we do need to lean on our natural gifts and our natural talents, because they will come to be a lifeguard and a safety net later on.
Absolutely.
But at the time it was, what's wrong with me, because this is how the world is seeing me. Now, the same thing, in sports and everything like that, because what you said is that in school, I found one of my biggest obstacles, but later on, just fast forward 3 years later, I found one of my greatest strengths and foundations as a young man. And that, again, something that I carry to this day. It's like the lessons that are painful to learn and leave the biggest scars are some of the things that save your life later on down the road.
Wow, absolutely.
The scar there made sure that I never forgot it. Even as you talk about it, I can feel it. I almost go back to my home at 537 Westwood Court, and I'm in the living room because I could hear my mom every time she pulled up. I hear the truck turn off, and I would go to the window, kind of like an excited kid, except the days when I knew I got in trouble and I got suspended. Then I heard it and I said, oh, I got to hide. I got to pretend that I was doing something. I don't know whether I was reading my Bible, reading a book. I was doing something that she's going to say, you know what? Don't worry about what you did earlier. But so I remember that day. And so that scar is still there. It's not a scab anymore. It's a scar. So it's still there and I still feel it. Now, fast forwarding into ninth grade, where the highest grade point average I ever had leading up till ninth grade was a 2.3 grade point average. It was good enough to be on the basketball team. It was good enough to be eligible for sports. You just needed a 2.0. And I was like, well, I surpassed that. I'm doing something right. So ninth grade, I was scared. I was uncertain. I was extremely nervous that I could barely get by K through 8. Now I'm in ninth grade. It's almost like going from the minor leagues to the major leagues, JV to varsity, just, no pun intended. And because of the amount of work and the amount of pressure that I thought was going to be on me. And so I just remember thinking, okay, how am I going to survive? How am I going to get by? So I get introduced to playing football, and I started watching people on the football field who would go out to practice early. And these kids were smart. Like, they understood like the different positions, the different assignments. They understood that this linebacker does this offensive lineman does this. They knew their responsibilities. And I didn't. This was my first year playing organized sports. I used to play in the front yard and at the parks, but nothing outside of that. So I had no clue. And so when the gap would move, I'd say, Coach, where's the 2 hole? And he'd say, well, it's over here to the left. I'm like, well, it just moved from here all the way out to here. Where's the running back supposed to go? And so I watched the people who were successful on the field. When they were successful on the field, I took that, and then I started to figure out, like, why are kids getting, so I transitioned with that into school. Why are kids getting good grades in class when I'm sitting through the same 15-minute class and I have no clue what the teacher's talking about? But they're raising their hand. The teacher asks a question and they're answering the questions. And I'm like, I'm in the same class with all you guys. I'm not understanding it. I have the same book. I'm not understanding it. And so one day I got a ride from a neighbor who was 2 years older than me. And so Dan took me to school that day, and he said, hey, tomorrow I got to leave around 7 o'clock to get to school at 7:10. School started at 7:50. And I was like, cool, I'll be ready. I mean, I don't want to walk, so I'll be ready whenever you say. Right. So we get to school and he's early. And so I go sit outside my first period class, which was math. Mr. Muma was the teacher. And so I'm sitting there about 7:15. It's a little cold. I took my breakfast that day, so I'm eating my breakfast. And here it is. I see one of my good friends, Joey Perkins, walk in. And Joey Perkins walks by, and he walks straight into the class. And I'm thinking to myself, I look at my watch, I'm like, it's 7:15. Class doesn't start for another, 35, 40 minutes or something. Right. So I walk into class and I look, and Joey's sitting there. He's got his backpack. He's got the book out, and the teacher's at the chalkboard. This is back in the day we all had chalkboards. And the teacher had the chalk, and he was answering Joey's question. So Joey was asking questions from his book from the homework assignment last night. Mm-hmm. So he had 40 minutes before school started to get his questions answered. So during that same week, teacher passed back the quizzes for the week. I'm like, my grade, D. I look, Joey's grade, B+. Okay, so I wonder if there's a correlation between Joey showing up early and going to class and getting his questions answered and his B+ and me and my D. So all of a sudden I start going, because now I'm a competitor. Joey's going to class earlier. I didn't want to be left out. I'm going to class early now. Now we started to compete. Can he get there earlier? Can I get there earlier? It was just this little fun game. And David, without boring you with the rest of the story, man, I ended up with a 3.5 grade point average the very first semester in high school. Now, why is that important? Because not only did I go from a 2.3 to a 3.5 grade point average, I also got the results to show me that the process worked. Even though it didn't yield fruit absolutely quickly over time, it let me know that showing up early, paying attention in class, asking your questions, and then doing the work, it's going to present the rewards that you want. The fun.
You focused on the root and not the fruit.
There you go. Come on, you speaking my language now.
So you sowed the right seed, yes, which was a root, and you didn't necessarily. You knew what outcome you were looking for. You did not know how that was going to come or how big that outcome was going to be. And I'm sure it surpassed your expectations.
Huge. So I didn't know, to be honest with you, I didn't know the outcome I even wanted. I just knew what not to do. I didn't know how to get good grades. Mm-hmm. I didn't know how to get on the honor roll. I didn't know how to stay off of being grounded in high school. I had no clue because that's all I'd ever known. Mm. But what I knew was what not to do. So don't sit there and study for the test the night before. That's one thing. Don't sit there and crack open your book the day before the final exam. Don't sit there and talk all in class. Don't show up late to class. Don't sit there and talk to your friends during school. And now I learned a very important lesson. So I'll put a cap on that. So I learned what not to do in those situations. Now, what to do. So we all have examples. I say, if you can't find the example, find the proof. Example meaning if it's not an example in your house, if it's not an example on your street or in your block, but if you have the proof, social media, Google, your next door neighbor, somebody who you see at the bus stop, anybody who you come into contact with, you have the proof. You might not have the example in your sphere, so to speak, but you have the proof. In 8th grade, I didn't have the example, but I had the proof, and I'll nail this story real quick. So in 8th grade, 7th grade, I had a best friend by the name of Todd. And Todd had 2 parents in his house, came from 2-parent background, both graduated from college. They did all of these wonderful things, entrepreneur. Now, how did I know that? Because every time I went to Todd's house, all of his parents, like accolades were on the wall. Okay. And one of the things that I specifically remember was every time I would go to the refrigerator, because I was a big kid, so I used to love to eat anything in the refrigerator, I'm going to eat it. So on my way to the refrigerator, I always saw Todd's report card on the refrigerator. At my house, there was never a report card on the refrigerator. At Todd's house, it was straight. So I took note of that. And so there was 3 straight days, and 1 week in particular, when I was in 7th grade, Todd was in 8th grade, that I called him after school and I said, Todd, let's hang out, let's play. Todd was like, nope, can't do it. So I called him the next day. For 3 straight days, he said no. And the 4th day, I was like, man, am I cool enough to hang out with at school? And then you can't, like, what is it? Because I got bad breath or I got BO or something? You don't like my clothes? And Todd said, no, man, the first thing I do when I get home is I do my homework. He said, Thomas, what's the first thing you do when you get home? I said, well, I'm calling you. I'm trying to play.
Right. Exactly.
So he said, well, see, that's some of your problem. He said, I do my homework first, and then I play with whatever time's left over. If I don't have time left over, that means I'm not supposed to play. Mm-hmm. Todd taught me the lesson in 7th grade that you do what you have to do first so that you can do what you want to do later.
Yes.
Now, I learned that again, and now I put it into practice in 9th grade. Do what you have to do I have to get good grades because I want to play football.
That's right.
I need to make sure that I understand the assignment so that when I'm at football, I'm not thinking about math class.
So you're talking about being present.
Yes.
And whatever you're doing, you need to be
Yes.
present in that. And so whatever else you had been doing needs to be completed and thorough so you can stay focused and in the present.
Yes. Yes.
How old were you? How old were you?
13, but I made a lifetime of mistakes leading up into that point. So again, I figured out what not to do.
A lifetime of mistakes up to age 13.
Right to age 13. Trust me, when you do it wrong enough for a long time, you don't have to repeat those. So at 13 years old, I did find out exactly, again, what not to do. So again, do the things you have to do so you can do the things you want to do. I have to go to school for these 8 hours.
Yeah.
So I can do the things I want to do, which is play football after school. And I want to be at football practice, not in class, because I want to make sure I'm understanding. These kids are not better than me on the football field. I beat all these kids in tetherball, kickball, 3 flies up in elementary school. I know their pedigree. They're not better than me, but they're outshining me on the practice field this first semester when we're going through practice. Why? Because they know what to do. So how do you make up for time the same amount of time that everybody has? You cut the fat. Everybody knows that. You trim the fat. So what I did is that I took care of school in school so that at practice I could be fully aware. Okay, so this is my assignment here. This is what they're doing here. I can pay attention. I'm fully present. Like a coach always said, be where your feet are.
We often hear that 90% of it is showing up.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like there's a time component significant to your showing up. When you show up is as important as showing up.
Yeah. I always say this, just showing up will get you shown up. Just showing up will get you shown up. And in anything you do, if you think that my presence alone is good enough to succeed, everybody can show up. Seriously, that takes nothing other than, I graduated college and I just showed up. I didn't get any great grades. I didn't do any of that. I just showed up. And that's what got me, I got a college degree just by showing up. Now I didn't get cum laude and all those other things.
Right.
The same thing I learned in sports, just showing up. Like, you have to put in the work. The same thing I learned that day in 9th grade. When you show up, if you think just showing up where everybody else is showing up, you're going to get shown up. That's why I couldn't answer a question in class. That's why my grades came back at D. I was so embarrassed to receive my quizzes and my exams back. But when I showed up before everyone else showing up, then that's when the results came. And like you talked about, it is about the root over the fruit. It's about the preparation and the process that outwits the performance. And understanding that it's not about, you can't practice and prepare in the performance. You have to prepare, then practice what you prepared, and then you perform. And so I learned that really probably the first 6 months of high school.
We hope you're enjoying Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Paralysis to Purpose for more updates. Also, check out David's website at davidcookspeaks.com to learn more about his mission and purchase his book, Getting Undressed, From Paralysis to Purpose.
Hey, welcome back to Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. I want to talk with you, Thomas, a little bit about, I coached high school basketball for years, and I'd had some time at the collegiate level. But in high school, one of the most uncomfortable things for me that I did not like was having to make cuts. To tell a young man that, not that he wasn't good enough, but that he didn't fit what we were doing. And at that age, he didn't understand that he didn't fit. All he saw was that I'm not good enough. And I want to talk to you about the handling of adversity and obstacles. I believe that obstacles don't redefine you, they redirect you. I really believe that. And I also believe that your purpose is never paralyzed. Your purpose is always living and breathing. And in spite of the cuts and the obstacles and different things that happen, it's still there for you to fulfill, even though you may, how on a GPS, if you're going somewhere and there's an accident and they tell you, we're going to reroute you the other way because there's an accident. Well, they know where you're supposed to get.
Yes.
And you're taking a different route now because there's been an accident. There's been something that happened. You only started 10 games at the University of Southern California.
Right.
You were on the brink of quitting.
Yeah.
I want you to take me from there into your NFL career.
Yeah.
And how you got cut and how you kept bouncing back. And then we're gonna get to how you are helping people transition from their paralysis to purpose.
Yeah. So, it's one of those things talking about you'll never forget. I'll never forget the day that I found out that I was supposed to marry my best friend, who's now my fiance. I'll never forget the day my daughter entered into this world. There's just certain things you'll never forget. And I will never forget right at the point when I was getting ready to quit football, which then again led me to a purpose. And so I wanted to quit. I was going into my senior year. And just like you had mentioned, up until that point, I'd started 6 games at linebacker. And I'm thinking, there's no reason to keep playing. Why don't I just quit football, do a couple of internships, have fun during my senior year so that I can enjoy life, and then I can get on with life and get into the real world. But it goes back to the fable and the understanding of the man who was striking and looking for diamonds. And right before he gets there, he's getting ready to quit. Right before he gets to it, he quits and turns back. And then there's a picture of another one there's somebody who keeps going. That's the difference between being a quitter and somebody who is risk adverse and somebody who loves the adversity. And so I talked to a coach, Ken Norton Jr. one day, and I said, Coach, I want to quit. I'm ready to be done. And I said, what's the reason of fighting a fight that you're probably not going to be able to win? And I think more than anything, which the thing that I love about Coach Norton, and I think great leaders and great employers and great coaches, whether it's business or athletics, is that they coach the person first and the employee and players second, right? The bad ones, they coach the player and the employee first. It's strictly business, but not the person. And Coach Norton knew what football meant to me and going to the NFL. And he was like, well, you can quit. And we'll never know if you were good enough or you can make it. He said, or you can give your senior year every single thing that you have, all of your mind, all of your soul, all of your might. And if the NFL doesn't accept you, then maybe they weren't good enough for you. And the day he told me that, maybe they're not good enough for you, it shifted the perspective of I'm in control. I'm the one that's interviewing the NFL. Are you worth my time? Are you worth my energy? Are you worth my body? Are you worth my brain? Are you worth my sacrifice? Are you worth all of these things? And when he told that to me, I said, all right, I'm gonna give it a go. And that's right. I'm gonna give it everything I have. For the next 365 days, I'm gonna give it everything I have. And if I don't get selected, you guys don't deserve me, because my best is good enough for me, regardless if it's good enough for you. So going through my senior year, it literally took away all the pressure. There was no more pressure. I'm not trying to play to get on a scout or a team's radar. I'm playing to give them everything I have, because if this is my last year, I gave it everything I had.
So you were never asked to go to do anything beyond your most?
Never.
Never. You were never said, you never were told, you need to work harder than this person over here.
No.
But what you were told at a high level of Division I football by a great coach was that you need to give your best, because that's all you can give. And anything short of that, you're cheating yourself.
Yes, you're cheating yourself. But not only are you cheating yourself, you're also, as I learned later, you're also robbing the other people around you who you are influencing. See, I influence people who are the starters. I influence the guys who we saw on ESPN and Sports Center who went first round. And not I influence them because I'm being braggadocious or I'm being, prideful. They told me, hey, you inspired me because the way that you did everything, you gave everything you had with your limited opportunity. I didn't have a choice but to give everything I had, because there's someone like you. It's like the Bible says, you good and faithful servant. You were faithful a little. Now I make you ruler over much. Like you did so much with a little bit that I inspired. So what he was also telling me is that there's people who look up to you, even though they're in front of you. And so they're looking for you. And if you quit and you leave, you're robbing them.
Wow.
Of reaching their potential as well.
So purpose and all of that is always bigger than you.
Oh, it's always. Every
Always.
single thing that we're doing is bigger than us. It is always bigger than us. So if we keep going, it's bigger than us. If we stop and we quit, it's bigger than us.
So you, even though the odds were against you getting there, there was benefit to you doing what you did to try to get there.
Yes, it's for the greater good. Oh, it's always. Every single thing that we're doing is bigger than us. It is always bigger than us. So if we keep going, it's bigger than us. If we stop and we quit, it's bigger than us.
So you graduate from USC, you get drafted by Jacksonville, I believe.
Yes.
And it begins your career.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your journey. I mean, because everybody thinks that when you get there, you know, it's all peaches and cream and lots of orange juice, I guess, for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you say that, because that's exactly what I thought. The day I got drafted, it was about another 2 or 3 months. I graduated from college and I fly from LA to Jacksonville, Florida. And I'm thinking kind of like Miami, Tampa vibes, but it wasn't that. They said, welcome to South Georgia. And I was like, welcome to South Georgia. We're in Florida. And so there goes one dream. So there wasn't like the palm trees and the beautiful weather and everything like that. It wasn't a place for a 23-year-old single man. Now being 36, having a family, I would have loved it. But that wasn't the place that I envisioned. And so they opened up the locker room doors and they said, go find your locker. And I thought it was going to be kind of like parting of the Red Sea. It was just going to be this amazing like chorus. You could hear the chorus opera in the background and it was going to be the voice and everything. And David, when I walked through there, man, I was like, is this it? Is this everything that I'd worked for this feeling, for this moment? I said, this has got to be, there's got to be, like, maybe it just hasn't hit me yet. Maybe it's going to be a delayed reaction. And it wasn't. It wasn't. That first year, people asked me, what's it like playing in the NFL? My friends would call me, family would call me. I said, everything I thought and less. Not everything I thought and more, but every single thing I thought and less. Why do I say that? Because everything I thought as far as the money, as far as the fame, as far as the status, and less, meaning the internal fulfillment. That feeling that I thought I was going to have, I'm going to be more confident. I'm going to be a little bit more proud. I'm going to be a little bit, I was still lacking. I still have a void in my soul. Now, what I will say is that on my journey to becoming an NFL football player, I had the most confidence in the world. Why? Because I was meeting these obstacles everywhere, whether it was getting injured, whether it was a younger player who, came in and took my spot. They wanted to switch positions for me. So it was like all these obstacles and I'm breaking through them. I'm breaking through them. And it's like that glass when you're shattering, there's confidence in that.
Yeah. It
wasn't confidence in getting to the NFL. It was every single thing that I overcame to get there. The 6th grade teacher, the getting the 3.5, the starting, the cut, the getting injured, every hurdle was what gave me the confidence. So I walked through that door and I was unfulfilled. And I remember one day, about a year after my first season, it was during the off season and I was in my apartment in Jacksonville. I got down on my knees because I wasn't having fun. Again, I'm talking about the fulfillment part. I said, God, make this thing fun again. Make this thing fun again, like the stuff that I used to look forward to when I was in college, when I was in high school, when I didn't know if I was going to be here. Now, I will tell you one thing. Make sure you're careful of what you pray for. My friend, because you might get it. And if you get it, it's not going to be the same expectation you had in the same circumstances when you prayed it. I tell you, it was probably no longer than 3 or 4 months. I get my first opportunity. I call it opportunity to get cut. And then from there, it was like a roller coaster of going through different training camps and different trials and different oppositions. I go to New England for about a year. I went to Seattle for a couple of weeks. I went to Buffalo for a couple of weeks. And then I go to Carolina. Then I go to Tampa Bay. And it was just this emotions of roller coasters. And then my career ended because of a neck injury. And that neck injury actually was one of the greatest things that happened to me, even though I couldn't see it at the time, because it forced me, right? So we're operating at the level we think that we're supposed to be operating on. But there's another level that's calling us. It's pulling us in, saying, look, you're operating there at that level, Thomas. I need you to elevate. So just like as a parent lifts their child up on the next level of the ladder, helps them up so that they can get on the playground, so they can get to the slide. The same thing for me, so I can get to the slide and have fun. Again, the purpose, whole thing, is that I needed to get pulled up to the next level and operate as a transitional expert. Now, how do you become a transitional expert? You have to go through the pain, the sorrows, and the hurt, the insecurities, the uncertainty, the fear of what the transition is like. See, I was only supposed to go to the NFL so that I could help other people transition outside of the NFL. I wasn't supposed to go there and play and make a whole bunch of money. I was supposed to go there and play, get experience, get exposure. Now I have a platform to teach people what it's like to come out. I was one of the last players of my friends to get to the NFL, and I was the very first one of my friends to come out. God, why is this happening to me? Because if you don't go there, you'll never be able to help people go from where they are to where I'm calling them to be. And so I went to, I stopped playing on a Thursday. I went to church on a Sunday. I go through the church doors, and the song Amazing Grace is playing, and I never heard this part. It said, my chains are gone and now I'm free. I said, whoa. Now I'm free. My chains are gone. My identity, playing football, my chains are gone and now I'm free. I'm sitting there and I'm listening to the pastor and he's talking, and I couldn't tell you what his sermon was, but God said, you thought football was your purpose, but it was just your passion to lead you to your purpose. And I said, okay, now I got it, but what do you want me to do with it? And I went on the journey of everything I just talked about. I experienced every emotion of going from what you thought you were created to do, losing that, then God replacing it with what I'm supposed to do, transition, help people. Now I can do it. And people come to me because I'm a former football player, but they don't know that when I'm talking, I'm giving them 70% of what they want to hear and 30% of what they don't know they need yet.
This is such a powerful story of purpose. And the whole thing about is I just listen to you and I go back to your childhood where you were seeking an identity for years. And after you were let go, when you exited out of the NFL, your identity became clear and you knew who you were and what you were supposed to do. Since we talk about the Bible, Joseph needed Potiphar's wife in order for him to run Egypt.
Come on.
He needed
to go to jail. He needed all of
that. I had to get fired as the head coach at Marquette High, my alma mater, with no reason to be fired because I needed to move. I needed to exit from there.
Yes.
So that I could write this book and begin speaking because I would have been there too long.
I should have been speaking a little bit more confidently, a little bit more boldly before, but because I was delaying my purpose and I didn't believe that this is what my calling was, it's going to take me a little bit longer. And now the movie's going to get played. It's going to come to final production. It's going to be exactly what we see on the big screen. Well, not anymore. It's not a big screen, but what we see on the TV screen. So it's going to be that. Here's the thing. We need to be obedient to the signs, to whatever you believe in. We need to be obedient to those signs and saying, this is what I'm called to do. This is what I'm supposed to do. Very similar to me. I would speak and I would talk in school. Now I speak and I talk for a living. The world, my teacher, my principal, told me, you're a menace to society.
Right.
If I would have believed that, because there's certain, I believe in good and evil. I believe in it. I understand the higher powers at work. I completely understand. So God said, if you listen to those people, you'll never reach the place that you're supposed to go. And you can't lose that. There's going to become people and oppositions and obstacles that are going to face you and say, do you really want this? Is this really what you believe your calling is? And I believe to my core that 100% of, you can feel it in your stomach, you know it in your spirit. This is for me. It might not look like it's for me right now, but the things that we can see are only temporary.
That's right.
Anything, it's only temporary, but it's the things that you cannot see. Again, the end, what's happening behind closed doors. It's the things that you cannot see, which are permanent.
Because we're almost out of time. And so I want to just touch on a couple of things. let's talk about leveraging solitude, the
Yes.
importance of reflection.
Yes.
We are in the midst of COVID at the recording of this podcast, and it given us all an opportunity and time for silence and solitude and reflection. I would like for you to speak on that a little bit, because I'm sure that's part of your counseling that you deal with as people are transitioning through these difficult times. How do we leverage solitude?
That's great. So first and foremost, we have never been given this much time by ourselves, good and bad. Good because exactly what you said. Man's greatest obstacle is its inability to sit in a room alone with his thoughts. It's our greatest obstacle. And so because we're given the time, we don't know how to do it because we don't have the practice. We don't have the conditioning. We don't have the understanding. If I could show you my bookshelf right here, I have 4 journal-like books. And it's because in the morning, I take 2 hours before I touch my phone, before I do anything. I get my push-ups, I get my sit-ups, I get my time, I get my reading, and then I get my time in the Word. Because I believe that that's my direction. Where am I going? For those first 2 hours, nobody in this world, don't talk to me, because that's my time with me. I need to fill up my cup. I need to get my direction from my coach who's going to tell me which play to run for the day. And then in that time is that I get a chance to reflect. It could be anything. It can be something as far as a note. It could be a journal. It could be an entry. It could be whatever it is. Now, with that being said, that allows me to now understand my cup is runneth over. So now I have overflow. I can give to the world to do that what I was created to do. See, one of the things we don't do is we don't start with the time for ourselves. Yeah. We have to take the time for ourselves so we can give the best time to others, especially in the world of coaching, mentorship, and leading people. So in order to get something, it has to be a thought. In order to get to the NFL, I had to have the thought of playing professional sports. I had the thought of playing professional sports when I was 7 years old at the Oakland A's baseball game. I was in the stands and I'm looking down on the field and I said, I want to do that.
So first, with a thought. Okay.
Second is write it down, because I never want to forget that feeling in which I had it. That feeling might not ever come back. The thought might, but the feeling in which I had the thought might not go. You have to feel it. All of these things, like I told you, when my mom got talked to, that was a feeling. That was a feeling. When I got cut from the NFL, from the teams, that was a feeling. When I left the game of football, that was a feeling. I never want to lose a feeling, good or bad. The feeling, because our emotions will change, right?
Right.
You know, COVID, this pandemic, you know, hopefully, you know, God willing that it passes, but we won't. Some of these feelings will go back to the way that we were doing life before. So the feelings can change. The thought won't. So write it down. Write the thought down. And also, when you write it down in that state that you're in, you always remember that. So therefore, as you pursue whatever you were writing down, whatever you wanted to remember, it stamps the level of importance that you had. Because it's like, I'll get to it. You know, I need to move my stuff, but I'll get to it. As opposed to writing it down. Man, I need to hang these TVs. When I need to put these books away. And as I write it in the feeling, I remember the feeling that I had. Wow. That's why vision boards are so amazing. Oh, so amazing. And so when we create these things so we have to think it, we have to write it, and then we have to see it as we're doing it, because again, that serves as one of the greatest accountabilities that we can have for ourselves.
And I can speak for myself, and I'm sure no one that's listening has ever felt this way. Getting it from thought to paper is not as easy as it sounds.
No.
That is, for me, I mean, I have a book, and that was the hardest thing for me to do ever in life. I've been in a wheelchair for 40 years. I've dealt with a whole bunch of different things. There was nothing like writing that book. Nothing like that. And so this is part of the process and the journey. Yeah. And it is part of the struggle. Now, look, this is a great place to end. We aren't even finished. I didn't get to talk to you today about the importance of mental health and healing in our process. We haven't had a chance to touch upon social injustices and how that impacts the journey. We have talked about legacy, though, which is pretty important, but really didn't get into it the way I thought we would today. But you really have shown us through your journey how perspective is important and what you see matters and how you see it. You never quit, that whole perseverance thing. And the partnerships, the mentors in your life. John Gordon, Ken Norton, your high school coach, your teacher, the partners along the way, and even more, who may not be names that people know, that have helped you along the journey to get you from a place of paralysis to purpose. And man, you've got a lot in you. That's all I would tell you. You have a lot in you, and the world's going to be a better place because of what you do. I'm going to give you a minute,
Okay.
Just to tell our audience something in closing before I close out.
You know, I love the title of your podcast, and I believe that because we can't see our purpose, we are paralyzed.
Mm.
We are. And I believe that the people who are listening, the people who are watching, the people who are exposed to your platforms, if you don't do that thing that's calling you from the inside, that you know, and it might be you, it might be your family, it might be a community of 10 or 1,000. If you, that thing in you, you will be paralyzed for the rest of your life. And as a mentor once told me, he said, Thomas, there's 2 types of pain in this life. There's the pain of regret, and then there's a pain of sacrifice. One lasts for a moment, sacrifice. One lasts forever, and that's regret. And I'm not saying that because you've been in a certain mindset up until this point, that it's going to last forever. But what I am saying is that just like in football, just like in sports, don't focus on the last play. Focus on this play to get you to the next play. And when you can do that, you will break the bondage and the strongholds and the paralysis that's in your mind so that you can live the life that we are exposed to seeing everyone else live. Everyone else is living it, so can you.
We're going to end it right there. What a great podcast this has been. Thank you, Thomas, for being our guest today. If you're interested in having Thomas come and speak at your event or provide coaching for you, or perhaps have him on your podcast, the best way to reach him is at his website, thomaswilliams.com. He's also reachable on social media at LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Until next time, this is David Cooks, the host of Paralysis to Purpose, reminding you that your ability to endure is always greater than your willingness to endure.
You can do anything you put your mind to.
Thanks for tuning in to Paralysis to Purpose. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paralysis to Purpose on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. To purchase his book, visit davidcookspeaks.com. Be sure to tune in next time for more inspiring conversations with David Cooks.
I wish that I knew that who I was okay, but I was constantly being changed, from my hair to the expectations of others and myself.
Next time on Paralysis to Purpose.
That it didn't allow me to understand what my value was as a human being born the way that I was born.
Paralysis to purpose.